Disney Star Wars has done it again in the latest episode of Star Wars The Acolyte. They have redefined the Force while also introducing a coven of lesbian witches that can create life through, quote, unnatural means. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And in this third episode of Star Wars The Acolyte, we are taken to a flashback where we see the twins, Osha and May, are children and living on the planet Brendok. Early in the episode, a character named Mother Anasaya informs the twins that the Coven believes in something called the Thread. This is how she explains it. All living things are connected by the same thread, a thread woven through all of existence. Some call it a force and claim to use it. But we know the thread is not a power you wield. Pull the thread, change everything. It ties you to your destiny. It binds you to others. So they have radically redefined the force as the thread in this episode. And this is a radical redefinition. It is in direct contrast to how the force was defined by both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda in the original trilogy. Obi-Wan described it thus in A New Hope: the Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. Yoda also described it in Empire Strikes Back. This is what he said: life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the force around you, here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship. So it's everywhere. It's not a thread. But that's what they're calling it now in the Acolyte. Completely changing the force. It's now the thread. May the thread be with you. Okay. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part is they introduced these lesbian witches and that they actually can use the thread to create life. Something that the Jedi nor the Sith did. So as they are practicing a ritual, Mother Anasai says this: tonight we enact a ceremony we have not performed since our exile. We were hunted, persecuted, forced into hiding, all because some would consider our power dark, unnatural. We were on the brink of extinction, and then we were blessed with a miracle, the gift of life. It's revealed that this gift of life is the two twins as they walk up to take part in the ritual where these children are being branded, and there's some kind of like purple force that shoots out of Mother Anasai's hands, and they're all pulling on these threads. It's all very evil. However, the ritual would be interrupted before Jedi show up. They demand the twins be tested as Jedi. Mother Anasaya has a conversation with Coral and a number of the other witches after the Jedi have interrupted it, and then they depart. Anasaya suggests that they allow the twins to be tested. However, Coral disagrees. Coral is a Zabrak, kind of looks like Darth Maul, female version, and she's like pale. And she says, I did not bring the girls into this world so that we would lose them to a bunch of deranged monks. Anasaya retorts, it is not your decision, it is mine, and I've made it. Coral then responds, I carried them. And then Anasaya says, I created them. Finally, Coral questions, and what happens if the Jedi discover how you created them? Implying that they were indeed created by dark and unnatural forces, or a power that they use called the Thread. This back and forth is then interrupted by an ancient witch. It's a Yoda knockoff who suggests the children take the test but lie so that they will fail and stay with their coven. So this has massive consequences, I think, with Star Wars. If you thought it could get worse or couldn't get worse, you're wrong. It just did. If you just completely checked out, you're probably like, wow, this is where they're at now. Glad I checked out. But this definitely undercuts the Chosen One prophecy that George Lucas introduced in The Phantom Menace, When Qui-Gon Jinn arrives on Coruscant with Anakin Skywalker, he informs the Jedi Council, I have encountered a vergence in the Force, a boy. His cells have the highest concentration of midichlorians I have seen in a life form. It is possible he was conceived by the midichlorians. Mace Windu then shares the prophecy. You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. You believe it's this boy. Qui-Gon responds, I don't presume to. However, he's cut off by Yoda, who says, but you do. Revealed your opinion is. And indeed it was. This prophecy and the idea that Anakin was conceived by the midichlorians or the Force comes after Qui-Gon learned from Anakin's mother Shmi that Anakin has no father. She told him earlier in the film, there was no father. I carried him. I gave birth. I raised him. I can't explain what happened. So clearly, he was willed into being by the Force. And this is exactly what George Lucas had in mind. And he says that, and he was quite clear that Anakin was indeed created to bring balance to the Force. He said this on multiple occasions. Here's just two examples. In the making of Revenge of the Sith, he said this, the prophecy was right. Anakin was the chosen one, and he does bring balance to the Force. He takes the ounce of good still left in him and destroys the Emperor out of compassion for his son. He reiterated this in the Chosen One featurette. It's literally called The Chosen One. Anakin is the chosen one, and even when Anakin becomes Darth Vader, he is still the chosen one. The prophecy is that Anakin will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. He becomes Darth Vader. Darth Vader does become the hero. Darth Vader does destroy the Sith, meaning himself and the Emperor. He does it because he's redeemed by his son. So the prophecy is true, and by doing that, he redeems himself and goes from being Darth Vader back to Anakin Skywalker. So given that the Acolyte is showing that this coven of witches is manipulating what it calls the thread to create life through unnatural means, the show will likely also try to reinforce the false idea that the Force is in balance when the light and dark are equal, rather than it's in balance when the Sith are destroyed, which I think George Lucas clearly explains when he's talking about the Chosen One. Balance to the Force is literally the destruction of the Sith and the dark side, right? When the Sith are no longer there, because he says right here, prophecy is true. Anakin will bring balance to the Force and destroy the Sith. He becomes Darth Vader. Darth Vader does become the hero. Darth Vader does destroy the Sith, meaning himself and the Emperor. So he fulfills the prophecy. He brings balance to the Force by destroying the Sith. And that's exactly what he does. Balance to the Force is destruction of the dark side. George Lucas, very clear on this, said it multiple times, but people still do this stupid yin yang, good and evil are on the same scales. Completely misunderstanding this. And I think Lucasfilm, people that are in charge of it now, are clearly doing this on purpose because they are evil. And they want you to think that good and evil are on equal footing. And they're not. Jesus Christ conquered death, opened the gates to heaven. He defeated Satan. So Lucas has explained this in a writers meeting for the animated series Star Wars: The Clone Wars as well. And he said this, the core of the Force, I mean, you got the dark side and the light side. One is selfless, one is selfish, and you want to keep them in balance. What happens when you go to the dark side is that it goes out of balance, and then you get really selfish and you forget everybody. So clearly, if you go to the dark side, you are out of balance. That is what he's saying. And ultimately, you lead yourself, because when you get selfish, you get stuff or you want stuff. When you want stuff, you get stuff, then you get afraid somebody's going to take it away from you, whether it's a person or a thing or a particular pleasure experience. Once you become afraid that somebody's going to take it away from you or you're going to lose, then you start to become angry, especially if you're losing it. And that anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering, mostly on the part of the person who's selfish, because you spent all your time being afraid of losing everything you've got instead of actually living. He later summarized it this way. The only way to overcome the dark side is through discipline. The dark side is pleasure, biological and temporary and easy to achieve. The light side is joy, everlasting and difficult to achieve, a great challenge. Must overcome laziness, give up quick pleasures, and overcome fear, which leads to hate. So clearly, this whole idea that the light and the dark are on equal footing is not true. Lucas has said this multiple times, but they're going to continue to do this. In the Acolyte, obviously reinforcing this idea, clearly playing with this idea that these evil people have created these twins. And then there's obviously an implication that the twins are a manifestation of the light and the dark. One clearly goes to be trained with the Jedi. The other was wanting to stay with these witch coven and is now being trained by a Sith. So I definitely feel like they are trying to play into that stuff, even though it is anathema to Star Wars and George Lucas's vision. And Lucas made this abundantly clear just ahead of this show's release. He made an appearance at the Cannes Film Festival, and I definitely think he was probably trying to preempt all of this garbage that Disney Star Wars is pushing with the Force. And he says, I was the one who really knew what Star Wars was, who actually knew this world, because there's a lot to it. The Force, for example, nobody understood the Force. When they started other ones after I sold the company, a lot of the ideas that were in the original sort of got lost, but that's the way it is. You give it up, you give it up. So obviously making it clear that what Disney is doing has nothing to do with his Star Wars, and they don't understand the Force, and they don't understand Star Wars. And I think that's abundantly clear just based on what they're doing here with the Acolyte. This is not unexpected. This is what Disney Star Wars does. And unfortunately for them, people are tuning out, and they are not buying into this stuff because it is indeed trash. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.